Welcome to episode 202 of the Corbett Report, How to Overthrow a Dictator. In December of 1989, as if by a miracle, the yoke of Ceausescu's communist oppression in Romania was thrown off in a spontaneous people's uprising. And it all started in the unlikely provincial capital of Timișoara.
It all began on December the 15th, 1989, with demonstrations in the western city of Timișoara. The protesters were trying to protect a local, ethnic Hungarian dissident priest, Laszlo Turkish, from harassment and eviction by Ceausescu's secret police, the Securitate.
The crowd increased to some thousand in number, and then came out the forces of the state, and they tried to dismiss us, to spread the crowd, but they did not succeed. The peaceful opposition of the believers became a decided demonstration against communism, against Ceausescu.
Demonstrations continued, growing in size over the following days. Claudio Iordache remembers how he and his friends broke through the police cordons to this balcony in the city's opera house, the place where the revolution began.
The 20th of December left a bloody stain on Timișoara's snow. Dozens of citizens were shot, hundreds wounded, thousands were arrested and put in city prisons. There were crowds of people. The city was raging. I could see how workers were forming groups and heading towards the city center.
Initial reports suggested many hundreds had been killed. These figures later appeared exaggerated, but to this day there is still no independent confirmation of the number of dead. The protests quickly spread to other Romanian cities, including Bucharest.
Dear friends and comrades, citizens of Bucharest, capital of socialist Romania.
December 21st, 1989. This was the last time Ceausescu ever addressed his nation. He was seeking to restore his own authority after bloody events in Timișoara, but his plan went terribly wrong. That night, street battles broke out in Bucharest between demonstrators and pro-Ceausescu forces who failed to contain the revolt. And with angry crowds storming Ceausescu's offices the next day, he and his wife Yelena had to flee by helicopter, only to be seized outside the city and executed in 3 days' time.
And so it was that the people of Romania threw off the yoke of their oppression, overturned their dictator, and lived ever after in perpetual peace, harmony, and prosperity. Well, of course, not really. There is a sense in which the narrative of the people spontaneously uprising and taking the power back from the dictator that had been oppressing them is not quite true.
In Timișoara, the turning point came when the army joined forces with the crowd. Senior officers seized leadership from the balcony. This was the real moment of the revolution, proof that the army had turned against Ceausescu. Significantly, this was 2 days before Ceausescu turned tail at the mass rally in Bucharest. By that stage, the army generals must surely have already decided that Ceausescu had to go, and which new leadership they would support. Not only was the army crucial to the success of the revolution against Ceausescu, but it is now vital for the stability of the new regime. Here at Timișoara's army headquarters, armed security outside is at an unprecedented level. They are determined to repel any threat against the new order. Do you fully support the revolution?
Vreau să fac o precizare. armata.
I want to be very precise about the fact that the revolution was achieved not by the army but by the people, by the youth, and we only are here to protect what they have gained, and we are decided to do it and to make everybody live in peace and express their own sincere feelings.
Do you regret that the Communist Party has lost much or most of its power?
I am happy to be now here and to tell you that the communists, meaning Ceausescists, are not any longer the power leading in the country.
So you are happy that the Communist Party has lost most of its power?
Absolutely.
Yes, myself, and not only myself, but all the officers and everybody working in the army are happy that this has happened, and we are glad that this tyrant has been thrown away.
Ceausescu downgraded the army in favor of his own elite Securitate. Top-ranking officers despised him. He abolished their titles, making them his personal appointees. They were ripe to ditch him.
Perhaps to really understand the deliciousness of the irony of that clip, you have to actually watch the video from whence that audio was extracted and actually see Major General Popescu sitting up there in his full army military regalia talking about how he was so glad that the people overthrew this dictator and how the military is just there to support them. And I trust when you do see that clip for yourself and you do appreciate the irony, you will come to understand for yourself a very simple truth about revolution, namely this, that it is in fact very easy to overthrow a dictator, but it is almost impossible to topple the power structure through which that dictator operates. A dictator ultimately is nothing more than a focal point for power in a society. And while that particular person can hang on to power through a series of alliances and agreements, both explicit and implicit, both from within his own country and outside of that country, the fall of that particular dictator does not mean the fall of the power structure.
It is over 100 years since Canada became a nation which encompasses Quebec. But Quebec's French-speaking population has persistently survived as a living francophone culture, never forgetting that one day Quebec might become a separate French-speaking state, free of outside domination. And nothing in Quebec has been more persistent than the entrenched Catholic Church, warding off assimilation while working with the English. The Church supported Quebec politicians such as Premier Duplessis. Duplessis was an authoritarian, a defender of the status quo, a Quebec nationalist, and a determined friend of private industry, who sold Quebec's natural resources to outside interests. Business flourished in English. Francophone Quebec remained rural, subjugated, and poor. But in the 40s and 50s, abused Quebec workers began to demand the basic right to strike. They were joined by intellectuals such as Pierre Elliott Trudeau, seen here in Bermuda shorts, and by organizers such as Michel Chartrand. Ranged firmly against the miners were the powers which controlled and exploited Quebec. Industrialization had come abruptly during World War II, and now it was sudden unionization. Here at Murdochville, the marching protesters were attacked from the hillsides by scabs hired to intimidate them. These early struggles aroused widespread sympathy throughout Quebec and in English Canada, which had witnessed similar bloody clashes in the 1920s. Here was the beginning of real social upheaval. The people of Quebec saw that change was within their grasp. Duplessis died in 1959, undermining the established powers and opening the way for a révolution tranquille.